We were talking about impeachment earlier. This is going to be this impeachment stuff could be absolutely nuts. We had Lindsey Graham the other day. I don't even know if we ever played that sound of Lindsey Graham saying, like, I hope the Democrats don't call witnesses, because then we'll start calling witnesses. We'll bring in the FBI and find out exactly who is in here. And I don't know what his implication is or who he thinks it, but I don't know if he's out there trying to pretend like we'll find out that these people were really Antifa or something like that. I don't know exactly what.
That's got to be it.
That's where my mind went.
Is he trying to appeal to that old conspiracy theory or those old, two FBI agents that were talking badly about Trump?
Maybe
like the deep state thing.
I think he must know that the Democrats aren't planning to call witnesses, or he thinks that they're not. And so he makes it like, we'll blow the whole lid off this thing. Well, it's like, well, if it's really like that deep, why wouldn't you blow the whole lid off it? But here is another attempt that's interesting that we're going to hear from the Trump's defense team. Here is David Schoen. He's one of the lawyers that's going to be representing Trump in the impeachment hearing next week. And he's going to explain why you should not remind people of what happened.
The second thing is, does this country really need to see videotapes? We know now, apparently, that Mr. Swalwell and the other managers tend to show videotapes of the riots and people calling in, people being hurt, police officers talking. Why does the country need that now? We would stipulate that there was a riot that went on that day. It was a tragedy. President Trump has condemned violence at all times. Read the words of his speech. Calls for peacefulness. This has nothing to do with President Trump. And the country doesn't need to just watch videos of riots and unrest. We need to heal now. We need to.
How many hours of BLM protests do you think that Fox ran over the course of the year? I would imagine it was like 98% of their programming. But the idea, so it's ironic he's saying it there, but the idea of a defense attorney saying, like, we don't need evidence presented as to what happened here in this chamber is pretty hilarious. I just don't think that's going to work.
Oh, of course not. I mean, this is his new legal team, right? He expelled the old legal team because, according to reports, Trump wanted them to focus on election fraud.
And he wasn't going to pay them.
Right. Well, and the old legal team was kooky and crazy. This new legal team, they have ties to Jeffrey Epstein. They have ties to Roger Stone. So just keep like going deeper down into the crevasse of of insanity. And so I guess they don't want to show any of the footage of the Capitol riots because they want to show all of the Sidney Powell Dominion evidence based on Trump's directives.
I think it has become pretty clear that the Republicans realize that this impeachment trial is going to be a huge liability for them because, again, it forces them to deal with it is a wedge. It's basically another wedge vote. You've got to pick a side here. Are you going to be with the vast majority of people who now disapprove of Trump, or are you going to be supportive of Trump? And again, this is going to put pressure. And the Democrats did take back the Senate this time around. I don't know that the candidates did a great job of hanging Donald Trump around the necks of the so-called moderates. But here they have another bite at the apple, and they're going to end up having a vote to acquit Donald Trump again, these Republicans. And so whoever's going to be challenging Ron Johnson in Wisconsin when he votes for impeachment, it's going to be part of his brand again, that he voted to save Donald Trump's hide once more. And that's going to be who he is when it's time for him to run for re-election.
Yeah. Well, if I had to venture a guess, I would say most of the Republicans are going to vote with Trump, except the ones in the purple districts, like we've been discussing,
or all but five, right? All but five. It's going to be the same alignment on that Rand Paul motion. 55-45. Not going to
Well,
be.
I don't know. I mean, there could be less than 5 that vote to convict him. I mean, they were just voting
That's
as to
the
whether or not
max,
there should be a
maybe.
trial. Right. That is, I think that is the max. And that's going to be a tough vote for people to vote to convict him. You know, I mean, look what they're doing to Liz Cheney.
Yeah, they'll vote your ass out. Sorry.
I like it.
I wonder what Liz Cheney's calculation was in hindsight.
I think it was the same one that Mitch McConnell was making, that they thought they thought they could pivot away from Donald Trump. And
now she might get removed from leadership because of it.
Yep. Guess again, idiots.
Yeah, well, I guess to bolster your point, Sam, she's a little bit more connected because of her, lineage to the old guard of that Republican Party. So she was more interested in that kind of strategy. But when she did it, I was still shocked because I just can't see somebody
but don't you remember
get away with this?
McConnell was leaking to the New York Times that privately he was happy about impeachment. I think, and certainly if you had asked me
but he's not going to vote that way. Like the point was that was a trial balloon, but she was forced into a position to make a choice like weeks ago.
Exactly.
So
exactly. And if you'd asked me, would the Republicans be able to pivot away from Trump? I would have said 6 months ago, I would have said yes, because the Beltway media in particular would midwife this entire operation to basically say, to support Biden's conclusion that the fever will break, that as soon as Trump is out of the way, they're going to go back to the norm, which of course I would contend was not in fact any different than what they've been behaving like now. But I think that project got wrecked on January 6th. I think that's what happened. And they all of their expectation that folks like Cheney and McConnell had, that they were going to be able to get past Donald Trump easily, got blown up because Trump did such a good job and the rest of them did such a good job of convincing them that Joe Biden wasn't really elected. 75% of Republicans believe in one fashion or another that Donald Trump actually won the election. And the media would no longer, created this, January 6th created a litmus test. And when, 10 of those Republican senators, 9 of those Republican senators still got up that night and said, we believe Donald Trump that the election was stolen, and 100, whatever it was, 30 in the House. I think, even Chuck Todd couldn't bring himself to go like, well, I mean, they don't really think this. Although I guess he did the other day, but
do you think that this could cause a backlash effect though, on behalf of, Trump supporters who maybe thought that the Capitol Hill riot went a little too far, but they still think the election was stolen and they're going to stand up to defend him no matter what happens after that? But
is that a backlash, or did they not really in any way ever change their opinion?
Well, yeah, I feel like maybe his grip on them was loosening a little bit after they saw what happened there. I don't know. I use my friend's dad as a proxy for this because he's the only really gung-ho Trump person that I know. He believes that the election was stolen, but then he saw what happened on Capitol Hill and he was like, well, they shouldn't have done that. It's bad that they did that. It's bad that he was mixed up in it. But if then they tried to impeach him based on that, he would obviously be on his side, be like, well, he doesn't deserve that.
Yeah. Also, I think people are still underestimating how Trump's grip is loosening based on him being deplatformed. Like him not having this direct line to his supporters.
And being out of power.
And and it's just
losing.
And losing. And it's just like it's like a, little, when someone gets stabbed by like that little sword in Game of Thrones or whatever, Arya's needle, like they're just slowly bleeding out. He's slowly bleeding out. And
Crowder's out on him. Crowder's mad that he didn't do anything about Silicon Valley. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially as he gets farther away from power. I do think it's going to curdle. So it's this weird moment where it's like he gassed it up with January 6th, but like, that's how sustainable is that going to be?
I mean, there's like 100 bills right now in state legislatures for, redefining how voting rights work in each state. And
Yeah.
that's where all this energy is going to get
Right.
redirected. So,
keep your eye on the ball.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
I mean, I think in terms of like your friend's dad, I got bad news. If it wasn't for the impeachment, it would be something else. It would be Colin Kaepernick or whatever, some other thing that would happen 3 months down the road where he would be right back where he was before. And I would also say, like, with Crowder is a perfect example of how they're trying to pivot away from Trump. They pick some issue that they just pull out of their arse, right? Like big tech. Like, I'm sure Crowder was very worried about big tech, and has a whole policy program on what to implement about big tech. But he needs something to make it look like he's he's principled. And that's why he doesn't like Donald Trump. So, I mean, I can already hear the argument that he's going to have with the other one of those other guys in the circle jerk that they have, where he's being interviewed and he's like, well, I had a big disagreement with Trump on the other stuff is okay, but I had to finally step back from Trump because of big tech. And it's just so like,
and he's talking about like how hard it was for him to bite his tongue when Trump would make it hard, like frame things the wrong way, and we'd have to play defense for him.
I mean, that is just, I just, like I've seen this cycle so many times with them on the right where, you had Sean Hannity, we were conservatives in exile and blah, blah. I mean, just all of the sort of machinations that they tell their audience to try and re-massage their audience. And it's fascinating. I mean, you can see it with what's going on with Fox. Like they had built an audience that was designed to chew on conspiracies, but always try and maintain some legitimacy so they're not perceived as Newsmax.
Right.
But
it's
then
almost
Newsmax
like they
showed up, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a second, we're getting out Newsmaxed. How do we keep our feet in both camps?
It's like they would, chew on the conspiracy steak, but then spit it out in their napkin.
That's right. That's right. That's well done.